I'll tell you what was interesting too is I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but with the Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker fight, obviously very tough night in the office for Anthony Smith. And I love Anthony Smith, huge fan of Anthony Smith. The only reason I wanted Johnny Walker to win is because I wanted Johnny Walker, Alex Pereira. That's my dream fight at light heavyweight for whatever reason. I'm weird. I think it'd be such a fun fight. But I thought it was so interesting when Anthony Smith was losing, they picked up on the mic. He goes, "You came for my family." And I was like, oh, is this like one of those like flashbacks when he was getting robbed at the house? You know, because Johnny Walker's like, what? He's like, "You came for my family." So the narrative online, especially on Twitter, was like, is he having like a PTSD type of situation? Because Johnny Walker's like, "I never came for your family. What are you talking about, man?"
Wow.
Yeah.
You're opening my mind right up on a Monday morning, if I'm being honest, because it did seem out of left field. Now, if you don't know the narrative coming in, Johnny Walker ended up in Omaha, Nebraska, training with one of Anthony Smith's coaches or former coaches, and that seemed very much like a mind game. Like Johnny Walker, right? It's sort of a weird backdrop to begin with, right? Brazilian guy, trains in Ireland, met his wife there, and now he's in Omaha, Nebraska, training with one of Lionheart's coaches,
Weird.
you know, but no, I don't think there's any family stuff going on. And hey, I mean, Anthony Smith is one of my dear friends. I think he's probably a future color commentator for the UFC, if I could go as far as to say that. But
he's great at it too. He's really good at it. Yeah. And that again, this is, you know, I'm out of the game, man. I tell dick jokes for a living. I'm just saying, I thought it was very, you know, where he's like, "You came from my family." I was like, oh, is this like one of those, like, is that what he needs to get this motor going? Like, is he traumatized by the home invasion there? Could be completely off. And Anthony Smith, like, yeah, Schaub.
I was thinking about that incident. I remember when I was watching his fight, but pretty crazy story. That guy just breaking. Imagine, you know, someone at like 4 a.m., just some dude screaming at the top of their lungs, who's not supposed to be in your house, and you got your kids there. I mean, that's just insane. But yeah, you know, for Anthony Smith, it seemed like he didn't really want to be there. And Johnny Walker seemed like he was hesitant to go out there and finish the job. It was kind of an odd fight there. And, you know, I think that's always going to be the question mark when you get a guy who is doing commentating or he's doing, you know, the fight analysis while he's fighting. Obviously I did that. People are going to ask questions like, is this what he wants to do? Is he halfway in, halfway out? And for Anthony Smith, I don't know, the last few fights, I don't know if it's directly related to him doing TV work, but just looking from the outside in, and being honest, I don't know. It didn't seem like he wanted to be there that night. I don't know. Something definitely seemed to be off, and it just wasn't that fight. But
because one thing about Anthony Smith, he's a dog, man. You know, that guy came up in the regional circuit like I did. Like, I've known about Anthony for a long time. Anthony is a dog through and through. So,
a ton of fights. Yeah,
when I see that, yeah, I agree. Did you have similar feelings, Kenny, when you knew you had a kind of a path? So you're not 1 foot, you know, you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out because you know you're gonna have a career doing this thing, yet you're still competing at the highest level.
I did not. I never really had that. I knew that, like, hey, when I'm done, I'm going to be done. I had no problem calling it quits. And when my body kind of gave out, my back was just kind of repeatedly giving out on me. I'm like, all right, I'm done. But when I was fighting, you know, I would take time off. I would always take like at least a month off away from doing TV stuff. And I'd always get my training in when I was working and traveling. But I don't know. Maybe I wasn't working as much as some of these guys too. So.
Yeah, you look at Dominic Cruz's schedule. You know, I just had him on Calabash Fight Campaign, and he was telling me how he's like, I'm not retired, man. I have no plans to. He's like, I'm still doing the works. He's like, so not only, you know, he worked Charlotte with you, John, but he was like, you know, I'm training 6 days a week still, so I have to manage the schedule, and then I'm also trying to put in the work for the broadcast. I'm like, geez, dude, to compete at that level and the demands that it takes, you guys know better than anybody. It's not easy, man.
Yeah, when Dominic has a fight, he will shut it all down for probably 8 to 10 weeks. And I think for Anthony Smith, there's a lot of layers to this, right? It just crossed the 1-year anniversary of his mother's passing, and he didn't effectively mourn that early on. I think now he did. There was a dust up with Mark Montoya back in the day. They have since buried the hatchet. They are realigned. There's a lot of traveling when it comes to his training, and then he goes home to the 4 daughters. Just a lot of back and forth and a lot of asking of himself, I think, mentally and emotionally and physically. So, you know, I do believe that sometimes guys just think they can do it all. And sometimes you just don't sort of give enough credit to the mental and how much it can weigh on you. But, you know, I do think the story is Johnny Walker. I know a lot of people are critical of the performance. sometimes we hear guys talk about like being focused on getting 15 minutes in, and it's sort of a weird mentality that they're focused on trying to get those 15 minutes against a top 5 guy. Because Johnny Walker got to be careful, right? Like my scorecard had a 1-1 going into the third. Now that might be the minority, but I actually thought Anthony Smith with some of those right hands won round 2. So I understand Johnny Walker won this fight, and I did have him winning this fight. You can argue that he won round 2. Got to be careful dicking around in there, with all due respect.
Yeah, I think for Johnny Walker too, the narrative, maybe a little bit of cardio issues early on. The career didn't go exactly as planned. Now it's kind of coming to fruition. He had what he thought the fight in the bag, which I kind of agree with him, with the leg kicks and overall damage, especially almost finished in the third. So I think he was just kind of weighing the pros and cons. And then also, Anthony Smith is a staple of the division, especially in the top 5 for how long? I mean, the guy's a damn monster. So I think for Johnny Walker, he's like, we got this one, man. We've done enough work. I think he could have got him out of there. You saw that jumping knee that kind of rocked Anthony. There's some times there we could have got him out, but I'm not mad at it. Obviously the fans are. I'm sure, some of the UFC brass probably want to see him get the finish, but for his progression, I agree with him. When you're going in there and you're starching the dude in the first round or maybe the second round, you're not learning a lot about your training camp, where you're at mentally. So for Johnny Walker, I think it was something he needed for himself in order to move on, because now he's going to be ranked probably, what was he, 6? So I think he'll probably get in the top 4, maybe top 5. So that it's like, it's only tougher from here, man. Those guys are tough to get out of there too. So when I see that, I'm like, oh, he's maturing. It's a good thing.